That morning, there was no rain, no thunder, no warning signs. Olivia Fowler stepped out of her boyfriend's house in a small Georgia town and vanished. No one saw her run. No one heard a scream. There were no cameras, no blood, no signs of a struggle. She was just gone, missing, a simple word that echoes for a lifetime. But the strange part wasn't how she disappeared. It was how the world kept turning, as if she had never existed. Police moved slowly. The media stayed quiet. And society, all too used to women like Olivia being overlooked, turned its back once again. Olivia wasn't famous. She didn't have 1 million followers on TikTok. She wasn't dating a celebrity. There was no scandal. She was just a 27-year-old single mother, trying to rebuild her life after a few missteps. And maybe that's exactly why no one found her, until it was far too late. Olivia Fowler wasn't famous. She had no criminal record, and nothing about her life seemed worthy of a headline. She was the kind of woman society often overlooks, until they vanish. 27 years old. A mother of 3, born and raised in Manchester, Georgia, a quiet place where red dirt roads snake between aging farms and front porches double as morning coffee spots, with the cicadas singing in the background. Her family was white and working class, living alongside predominantly black neighborhoods where neighbors knew one another and looked out for each other. It was Olivia's mother, Heather, who first felt that something was off the day her daughter didn't come home. Olivia had a gentle demeanor, but a complicated inner world. Years earlier, she had battled a mild addiction to prescription pills. She was in recovery, rebuilding. After splitting from the father of her children, she'd been moving between her mom's house, her aunt's, and sometimes staying with her new boyfriend, the last person known to have seen her alive. Every week, she FaceTimed her kids. Every weekend, she came home for family dinner. Olivia wasn't the kind of woman TV shows romanticize. She was tired, but she was trying. Her sister once said, "She always carried this little pink purse. The moment I saw it left behind, I knew something was wrong." That morning, the purse was still sitting at home. No one knows why Olivia left her boyfriend's house without it. Some people would later suggest she had anxiety. Maybe she just wandered off. But those who truly knew her insisted she would never disappear without telling her kids. Her town was small but tight-knit. When word spread that Olivia was missing, neighbors printed flyers, checked local security cameras, and flooded the police with tips. But no one had answers. And then there was one detail even her family hadn't known. The night before she vanished, Olivia made a phone call, nearly 20 minutes long, to someone whose identity has never been confirmed. August 13th, 2021. It was a Friday, an ordinary day in Meriwether County, Georgia. Mild sun, not too hot, and nothing out of the ordinary on the forecast. Olivia had stayed the night at her boyfriend's house, a small home near the edge of a wooded area, not far from Pebblebrook Road. A quiet dirt road lined with trees, rusted fences, and patches of undeveloped land. Around 7 a.m., her boyfriend later said Olivia stepped outside for a smoke. He went back to sleep. When he woke again, she was gone. No note, no sign she'd left. At around 10:30 that morning, a Georgia Department of Natural Resources, DNR, officer patrolling near Pebblebrook Road spotted a young woman walking alone. She wore a white crop top, shorts, and flip-flops. No bag, no water, no phone. The officer didn't think much of it. People walk near the Flint River often. He had no idea. He was the last person to ever see Olivia Fowler alive. As the sun began to set, and Olivia didn't show up at her mother's house like she always did, her mom, Heather, called her boyfriend. And just like that, concern turned into dread. He said he didn't know where Olivia had gone. No one had seen her come back. There were no security cameras, no traffic footage, nothing out of place. The next day, her family started searching the back roads, handing out flyers, knocking on doors. Local police initially believed Olivia had just gone off somewhere and would return on her own. It wasn't until the third day, August 16th, that the case was officially logged as a missing person. Those first 3 days, Olivia's sister later said, felt like the system had failed her from the start. A white woman from a rural working-class background, not wealthy, a past struggle with addiction. In a small southern town, she wasn't the kind of person who got priority. And by the time anyone took it seriously, the trail had already gone cold. At the time, Olivia didn't have a car. No vehicle was reported missing. No one knew where she went, who she was meeting, or why she'd left without her phone, ID, or even her usual bag, items she always took with her. When the family tried to trace Olivia's phone location, the results were chilling. Her phone had gone completely silent that morning. No pings, no data. Like someone had powered it off or destroyed it. The search widened, but no one called in to report seeing Olivia. No strangers came forward. No ATM footage. No strange vehicles. No signals. Just silence. As her sister would later say, she didn't disappear. She was abandoned into a void the world refused to see. 3 days after she was officially reported missing, Olivia Fowler's case began to draw attention in her small hometown of Manchester. But like most rural disappearances, especially those involving women with no money, no fame, the news didn't travel far. The family printed hundreds of flyers. They walked the red dirt roads, knocked on doors, asked every farmer, every neighbor. Some said they'd seen Olivia earlier that week, but no one had seen her after that Friday morning. One truck driver claimed to see a woman near the entrance to the cove, a heavily wooded spot along the Flint River known for its dense brush and difficult terrain. But the timeline didn't quite fit. Another person said they spotted someone who looked like Olivia in Talbot County, over 30 miles away, but there was no camera footage to back it up. A few leads began to emerge. Her phone, which had gone dark that morning, was believed to have pinged once from a tower near the woods, but it wasn't enough to triangulate a location. Police searched Pebblebrook Road. No signs of a struggle. No blood. No personal items left behind. No street cams. And since she was on foot, no one even knew where she might have been going. Her boyfriend, the last person to see her, cooperated with police, but he had no further information. There was no evidence to charge him with anything. Still, one question hung heavy over the family. If he was the last person to see her, why didn't he look for her when she didn't come back? Helplessness began to outweigh hope. The FBI eventually joined the case, but in those crucial early days, no decisive action was taken. And then, something surfaced, something that made everyone stop. A local resident, reviewing security camera footage from a road about 6 miles from where Olivia disappeared, noticed a figure, a woman, walking alone around 8:40 a.m. that morning. The image was grainy, but the shape, the posture, the hair, it looked just like Olivia. She was walking toward the woods. No vehicle, no one with her. The sunlight flickered through the trees, casting faint stripes across the road. Then she disappeared into the brush. That was the last time Olivia Fowler was ever seen on video. There were no other angles, no footage from the opposite side, just one quiet clip, a woman walking into the trees, and gone. The family gave that clip a name, the final step into the void. Because the question isn't just, where did she go? It's, why was no one walking with her? To make sure she got there safe, like every woman should be. The deeper you go into Olivia Fowler's disappearance, the stranger it all becomes. Not because of what was found, but because of what people said or didn't say. Her boyfriend, the last known person to see her, told police that morning Olivia stepped outside for a cigarette. Around 7 a.m., he said nothing seemed off, so he went back to sleep, and he didn't check on her again until nearly noon. He only realized she hadn't returned when Olivia's mother called, asking where she was. Police asked, "You didn't find it strange that your girlfriend went outside and didn't come back for hours?" He simply shrugged. "I thought she was just walking around somewhere." But that didn't fit with Olivia's usual behavior. She never wandered off without saying something, and she never left without her phone. Not with 3 kids who could call her at any time. And then there was the timeline. That DNR officer saw a woman matching Olivia's description walking alone on Pebblebrook Road around 10:30 a.m., more than 3 hours after her boyfriend said she left. So where was she during that gap? Did someone pick her up? Was she walking aimlessly? Or was something else happening? There were no cameras, no phone data, no GPS to fill in the blanks. And it gets even more unsettling. Olivia's younger sister later said Olivia was terrified of walking alone in isolated places. As police tried to reconstruct her final known movements, a new clue surfaced from the one thing no one could find, her phone. Even though the device had been powered off early that morning, the carrier logs showed that around 5 a.m., Olivia made a phone call. nearly 20 minutes long, to a number no one recognized. There was no contact saved under that number, no voicemail. And after that day, the number disappeared from the system entirely. Olivia had never mentioned knowing anyone with a number like that. Not to family, not to friends. And just like that, a new layer of mystery appeared, one that felt intentionally erased. As frustration grew, the local community began to mobilize. Friends, neighbors, and relatives organized their own search parties. They combed through the banks of the Flint River, dove into the thick brush no one else wanted to enter. They used drones, mapped grid zones, partnered with local volunteer rescue groups. But what angered them most wasn't the vast woods. It was the silence, the apathy. Police declined to deploy search dogs, citing a lack of evidence that Olivia had been harmed. Some officers openly suggested she might have just walked off due to stress. One search volunteer put it simply, "They always find a reason to blame the woman. They forget Olivia was a person, not a problem." As the volunteer search teams expanded their perimeter, they began going door to door within a 10-mile radius of Pebblebrook Road. Some residents recalled strange noises around dawn that day. A truck driving slowly, dogs barking excessively, but no one could say for sure when or where. None of it seemed important until Olivia vanished. An elderly woman who lived about half a mile from where Olivia was last seen said she spotted a black SUV parked at the forest's edge just before noon. She assumed someone was fishing or hunting, but something about it stuck with her. The vehicle had no front license plate, and the moment she stepped onto her porch, it sped off. She told the police. They made a note, but nothing came of it. Olivia's family began to believe that someone in the community knew more than they were saying, maybe out of fear, maybe because they were involved. Then, a flicker of hope came from the last place anyone expected. An old, grainy security camera at an abandoned gas station, 7 miles from where Olivia was last seen, captured something. Around 9:10 a.m. that Friday morning, a lone woman appears on screen. She's walking slowly, thin, long hair, wearing white. The image is blurry, but the silhouette looks like Olivia. She moves sluggishly, as if exhausted or disoriented. But it's not just her presence that stands out. There's something else. A shadow, trailing just behind her. It's unclear whether it's a person or something else, but it's there. Family-hired video analysts enhanced the footage. They believe a vehicle, possibly dark-colored, pulled up behind her. Then, the camera glitches for a few frames, and when it resumes, the woman is gone. Police have never confirmed whether that was Olivia, and they never released the footage to the public. By now, the internet was buzzing. Photos circulated on Facebook. People asked if Olivia had been abducted, or maybe got into a car thinking it was safe. No one had answers. Then, weeks later, a friend of Olivia's broke their silence. They posted, "I remember Olivia saying someone had been following her lately. I didn't think it was serious." It was impossible to verify, but it raised a chilling question. Did Olivia sense something was coming? Was her disappearance an accident or a warning ignored? Because if someone did make her disappear, that person is still out there. 2 months after Olivia Fowler vanished, the case had quietly faded from the media's attention. There were no official updates, no serious interrogations, no warrants, no declaration from law enforcement labeling it as suspicious. And for Olivia's family, that silence began to feel like something more than neglect. It felt like complicity. The issue wasn't just that Olivia had disappeared. It was that the world was so willing to move on. Then, someone resurfaced. His name was TJ, an old boyfriend of Olivia's from years back, around the time she had her first child. According to the family, their relationship was rocky. It ended after several explosive arguments. TJ was known for having a temper. He'd even been arrested once for minor disorderly conduct. At a community meeting organized by Olivia's family, TJ showed up, calm, collected. He even stood and spoke. "We need to pray for Olivia's safe return," he said. But something felt off. A friend of Olivia's leaned over to her sister and whispered, "I swear, just a few weeks before she went missing, she told me TJ suddenly texted her again, asking where she was." The family reported it to the police. They urged them to check the messages, to pull phone records. But the response? There's no evidence to bring TJ in for questioning. He wasn't interviewed. No one checked his phone. No one looked at his vehicle. No one asked where he was that morning. It was as if TJ didn't exist in the timeline. And then, the questions started, not from Olivia's family, but from Black residents in the community. If Olivia were a middle-class white woman living in the suburbs, college-educated, would TJ be investigated? The answer was clear, yes. But Olivia wasn't that woman. And TJ, a white man with a known violent streak, was allowed to slip through without scrutiny. It exposed an uncomfortable truth. Bias in the system doesn't only hurt Black families. It also erases poor white women. Women like Olivia, because they don't belong to the class of people society listens to. To the system, Olivia was just a statistic. A single mom. Recovering addict. No viral story. No headlines. And because of that, even with red flags, even with men in her life who'd hurt her, no one was called in. No one was investigated. No one was held accountable. In a quiet interview, Olivia's sister said, "Police told us if there's proof Olivia was harmed, they'd open a real investigation. But if no one cares enough to look for that proof, when does justice ever show up on its own?" Nearly a year after Olivia Fowler disappeared, a suffocating stillness settled over the community. Not because there was bad news, but because there was nothing. No new leads, no fresh witnesses, no arrests, no explanations. And worst of all, no one seemed to remember, except her family. Olivia's sister, Brittany, said she began having dreams of Olivia standing alone in the woods, calling out her name. Each morning, Brittany would check the mailbox, hoping for something, anything. And in the end, it was Brittany who unraveled the most damaging assumption of all, with one small act. She hired an independent analyst to review Olivia's cell phone data, this time through the lens of tower pings and signal history. And that's when something no one had ever mentioned came to light. At exactly 10:57 a.m. on August 13th, a faint signal from Olivia's phone hit a cell tower, deep inside the Flint River Wildlife Management Area, about 4 miles from where she was last seen. It directly contradicted law enforcement's claim that Olivia's phone had shut off before 9 a.m. If the 10:57 ping was real, it meant Olivia had still been alive, nearly 4 hours after leaving her boyfriend's house. And with that, the entire idea of a voluntary disappearance began to fall apart. But that wasn't all. A volunteer investigator, someone who had worked cold cases before, asked a simple question. Did anyone ever search the woods south of the Flint River? Not west, where most of the efforts had been. The reason, he said, was that early morning winds in Georgia often blow southeast. If there were any foreign scents or disturbances, search dogs wouldn't have picked them up from the opposite direction. And as it turned out, no one had searched that area. Every official effort had focused on the west and north, closer to homes, cameras, and foot traffic. But south, the dense, remote, overgrown terrain had been left untouched. A volunteer search team immediately began planning to head in that direction. But before they could move, the FBI called. They had found something. December 2022, nearly 16 months after Olivia vanished. The family was told little, just that a potentially related item had been discovered in a wooded area near the Flint River in Meriwether County. No trail, no road access, nearly 5 miles off the main road. At first, the family held out hope. Maybe it was a sandal, a bag, something, anything that could help continue the search. But that hope shattered quickly. When they received the official confirmation, the remains were Olivia Fowler's. There was no intact body, just scattered bones, partial clothing, no phone, no purse, nothing to explain how she got there or why, and most shocking of all, no cause of death. The coroner said, the bones were too decomposed to determine a clear injury. There were no obvious signs of violence, but we also can't rule it out. The family was left numb. They had waited over a year just to be told nothing, no cause, no time of death, no suspect. The suspicions that had once swirled about the boyfriend, about TJ, about the black SUV, about that eerie phone call, now floated like broken puzzle pieces no one cared to reassemble. The case was never labeled a crime. No arrests, No press conference. Just a brief FBI statement. The remains have been identified. The family has been notified. The betrayal, the abandonment, was felt not just by Olivia's loved ones, but by an entire community that had spent 16 months refusing to let her be forgotten. At a candlelight vigil, a neighbor said, "When they say there's no evidence, what they really mean is, we weren't willing to look deep enough." And once again, the old questions returned, this time heavier than ever. Why wasn't the boyfriend investigated further? Why was the old woman's SUV sighting ignored? Why weren't the phone data and camera footage released? And the most painful question of all, why is it so easy to accept silence as an answer when the missing woman is someone like Olivia? She may have died in those woods, but the real death might have happened the moment society decided she wasn't worth finding. The memorial for Olivia Fowler was held on a quiet afternoon in early 2023. There were no news vans, no helicopters overhead, just family, friends, neighbors, and 3 children in white shirts holding candles. Brittany, Olivia's sister, stood at the mic, her voice shaking. "They told us we should be at peace now that we found her. But how can I find peace when no one can answer who left my sister alone in the woods for nearly 2 years?" The family never received an apology. No phone call from police. No acknowledgement of delay. No promise of reinvestigation. The case was never officially closed. But no one talked about it anymore. No investigative journalists followed up. No podcasts did a deep dive series. Because Olivia Fowler wasn't a name that moved the needle. In the small community around Manchester, her death left behind a mix of fear, frustration, and quiet rage. At the vigil, a black woman stood and spoke. "When I look at Olivia, I see my little sister. I see myself. I see every woman who's ever been overlooked because she wasn't rich, didn't go to college, or had made mistakes. They say she probably just wandered off and something happened. But why do we always accept that as the ending? The small house where Olivia once lived with her mother now sits empty. The yard is overgrown, and her 3 children, now being raised by relatives, each hold a single photo. Olivia smiling, hair messy, holding all 3 of them close. No one can truly tell them what happened. And maybe that's the cruelest part of it all. Not the death, but the silence left behind. Because every FaceTime call Olivia made to her kids was her trying to stay anchored to life. Every Sunday dinner at her mother's house was her trying to reclaim a sense of normalcy. And that morning, when she stepped outside, maybe she never planned to go far, but the world let her drift too far, for too long, until she couldn't come back. A few weeks after the vigil, a letter was found on the doorstep of Olivia's mother's house. No signature, just one line scrawled in shaky handwriting. "I'm sorry, I didn't know she had really disappeared." There was no lead attached to the note, but it said something dozens of people in that community may have been thinking all along. Someone out there knows what happened and chose to stay silent. And perhaps that's the most terrifying part of Olivia Fowler's story. Not that she was abducted, not that some cold-hearted killer is still out there, but that so many people looked away. And maybe, just maybe, one glance in the right moment, one question at the right time, could have changed everything. From Olivia's story, a small group of black and white mothers joined forces to form a grassroots advocacy network. They called it "Say Her Name Anyway," a play on the phrase so often reserved for women whose disappearances are never spoken of. They went to small-town police departments, asking for updates on old cases. They put up posters of missing women from the past 10 years, on streetlights and bus stops. They held candlelight vigils every month, not just to remember Olivia, but to remind the world that women like her deserve to be remembered, even if they'd stumbled, even if they stayed quiet, even if they were ignored. One activist put it best: Olivia's death isn't just a personal tragedy. It's the result of a system that decides who gets to live and who gets forgotten. And today, if you Google Olivia Fowler, you'll find a few old articles, a couple memorial videos, some blurry photos, no ending, no suspect, no reason. And that is why people can't let it go. Because sometimes the truth isn't in what's been said, but in the silence between everything that should have been heard. If someone saw her walking that morning and thought, "This doesn't involve me," then maybe now they're living with a question that has no name.